My ancestral name is Khalak. Sukyo Siam Kwinsnas. My chieftain name is Sukyo. Chief Ian Campbell. I'm a hereditary chief from the Squamish Nation. So the Squamish Nation is currently about 4,000 members. We are in the greater Vancouver area. Our traditional territory is 6,732 square kilometers of all waters that flow into Howe Sound and Burrard Inlet, English Bay. So basically the entirety of Vancouver, North Vancouver, parts of the Sunshine Coast up to Whistler, and all the drainages that flow into those areas. We are comprised of 16 hereditary chiefs that amalgamated to collectively form the Squamish Nation back in 1923. So I'm a hereditary chief, but I also wore the responsibility as an elected official. We switched in 1981 from a hereditary system of government to a 4-year custom term election. Within the Squamish Nation EA process, we identified a number of areas that were of substantive concern to our members within the nation. One of them, for example, would be the seawater cooling technology that was initially proposed for the project. We looked at, the potential harm that could cause to the revitalization of Howe Sound with the return of herring biomass after decades of absence. We didn't feel that this was compatible, so we then proposed air cooling technology as an alternative and allowed the proponent to look at the feasibility of that to affect, improvements to the project. Another example would be on the Fortis line. There was concern of compressor stations in proximity to our inhabited reserves. Our members there had high anxiety of the potential for explosion. And even though the probability was low, the consequence was high. So we wanted to mitigate that type of risk by moving compressors away from our reserves more into the rural areas. Another example within our EA process was the avoidance of the Squamish River estuary, which is critical rearing habitat for herring and salmon, in an environment that's intact. So we wanted to ensure there's directional drilling that would completely avoid any impacts to the estuary. So these are 3 examples of how the nation was able to go into deep listening within our communities over 2 or 3 years of consultation to then compile that in a manner that made sense based on our analysis of Western science as well as Indigenous science, and put them together to then present conditions that we felt were very reasonable and that the proponent can adhere to. It's important to recognize that the Squamish Nation doesn't have 100% buy-in from our membership, that there's still a number of our members who articulate their concerns for the project, which we must continue to delve into deep listening, to listen to our members' concerns, to try and answer them the best way we know if we can mitigate those issues. One of the concerns, for example, was the issue of an influx of thousands of workers into the project area. The constraints within the Squamish or the Sea to Sky area for housing, affordability, things like this, daycare, became very constrained. So we looked at flotels on site because the actual project is water access only. So we wanted to mitigate a lot of the concerns that our members had and continue to have around murdered and missing Indigenous women, for example, to ensure that we're answering those responsibly and including peoples that have those concerns to make sure they have a voice and they're being respected. By having Indigenous peoples on board with projects like this, it meets our metrics that are measurable. Performance matters, ROI matters, procurement opportunities are important to our community members. Environmental management plans such as marine use planning, land use planning, allow us to create that sort of high-level 30,000-foot management plans through the life of these projects. And I believe that allows better metrics for people to look at, whether they're in Asia and they're coming off of coal and they're transitioning, the demand from Japan or from Germany or anywhere else. Really then we need to be able to respond to look at our market share within the global context. In doing that, it doesn't mean status quo, that we just come and deplete resources here within our territories. It means it's time for Indigenous peoples to have a voice and a seat at that table. And that's not goodwill or charity, it's partnerships.